Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got quite a source stack in front of us today. It really feels like this collision, between ancient scripture, maybe classified military thinking, and some, well, pretty far out transhumanist ideas.
It's definitely a lot to unpack. Intense stuff.
Yeah. So today we're diving deep into this whole concept framework around alien super soldiers and genetic hybridization. That's our focus.
Right. And the core sources we're looking at, mainly stemming from Luis Vega's work, they put forward this really extraordinary claim. It's about a directed long-term agenda, millennia long, supposedly,
An agenda to do what exactly?
to genetically compromise humanity. That's the bottom line. So our mission today is to try and understand the goal they're claiming, the technology involved, and these alleged military connections.
Okay, let's start right there with that central idea, this Luciferian Directive, as the source calls it. And it supposedly started way, way back, Genesis 6.
That's the claim. And the fundamental goal, the narrative says, is to, quote, defile the original genome of humanity.
Defile the genome. That sounds serious. More than just biological.
Oh, absolutely. It's framed as a spiritual assault. Historically, the specific aim, according to the source, was actually engineered to prevent the incarnation of Jesus.
How so?
Well, the thinking seems to be if humanity's genetic code, its very essence, was corrupted beyond a certain point.
Then the incarnation couldn't happen. Biologically or spiritually impossible?
That seems to be the implication in the source material, yeah.
Yeah.
A very high-stakes, ancient motivation, like you said.
But, okay, if that original threat, the incarnation, has passed from their perspective, why continue? The source says the agenda is still active, but now it's focused on offering false immortality.
Exactly. The goal shifted, supposedly, from preventing salvation to offering a counterfeit version of it. This whole hybridization thing, it's often presented, maybe subtly, through things like ancient aliens theories.
Right, the idea that maybe they're here to help us, upgrade us.
Precisely. Sold as a beneficial step, making us stronger, smarter, overcoming our human limitations, and upgrade.
So what are the mechanics? How is this genetic tampering supposedly happening? The sources mention mixing DNA, fallen angel DNA, with human.
That's the core mechanism described, yes.
Yeah.
And the specific objective mentioned in relation to human abductee experiments is apparently to produce this mysterious third DNA strand.
A third strand. What's that supposed to do? Give superpowers?
Well, the source links it less to superpowers in the comic book sense and more towards enabling a different kind of existence, maybe linking the physical and spiritual realms in a way that benefits these fallen entities.
So it's about connection or control?
Possibly both. The idea seems to be that this third strand facilitates a kind of psycho-spiritual link, almost like a hive mind connection back to the controllers. It makes the individual, quote, no longer fully human in the way the creator intended.
And that connects right back to the Garden of Eden story, doesn't it? Lucifer's promise to Eve, you surely will not die.
It's presented as the same lie, repackaged. Achieve this genetic breakthrough. Overcome death. That's the promise.
But here's the twist, right? The source also says the outcome is horrific and painful. That people will actually want to die but won't be able to. How does that square with the promise of immortality? Seems like a terrible sales pitch.
Yeah, that's where the sort of theological constraints in the source material really come into play.
Yeah.
The explanation given is that Lucifer, or the fallen angels, they don't have the complete blueprint. They don't possess the full genetic protocols of the creator.
So they can mimic life extension, but it's flawed.
Exactly. They can restructure genetics, maybe extend life, but they can't imbue it with true vitality or spiritual integrity. So the result is this agonizing state existence without purpose, suffering without release. That's the alleged terrible catch.
That makes the narrative hang together in its own way. Okay, so if that's the ancient goal and the supposed outcome, how does modern technology fit in? We're talking mRNA, nanotech, AI.
Well, that's seen as the key to the endgame, the delivery system, the infrastructure for rolling this out on a global scale.
Rolling what out specifically?
This genetic alteration. How do you get it into potentially everyone? The source points straight at what it calls the mark of the beast technology.
And the claim is that this mark will use something like an mRNA delivery system. Why single out mRNA?
The idea presented is that mRNA is incredibly efficient. It gets inside your cells systemically and can, theoretically, rewrite or edit the existing DNA instructions. So the claim is this delivery method carries the code, the components needed to activate that third strand.
And the consequence?
It permanently changes human DNA, changes it so much that the person, quote, ceases to be human.
which, in their framework, makes redemption impossible, the
Yeah.
ultimate separation. And this is marketed as evolution.
As the next great leap, the next evolutionary stage, the new tree of life. Humanity finally becoming like God. That's how it's supposedly sold.
And the sources name other specific technologies already in play, right? Not just mRNA. They mention blockchain and nanobots.
Yes, those are seen as key components of the infrastructure.
Okay, let's break those down. Blockchain. I usually think of cryptocurrency. How does that fit into genetic modification?
Well, the source views it as more than just finance. It's about creating an unchangeable, traceable record, fused with the body, maybe at the nano level. Your genetic status, modified or not, becomes part of this immutable digital ledger.
So it's about identification and control, proving you've taken the mark, essentially.
That seems to be the idea. Ultimate digital ID linked directly to your biology. Maximum control, irrefutable data.
And the nanobots, tiny machines inside us. The source claims they're programmable through sound, frequency, and light. That's very specific, not just, say, radio waves.
Yeah, the mention of sound and frequency suggests something more fundamental, maybe bypassing typical electronic interfaces. The implication is that ambient frequencies, light waves, things we might not even notice, could act as programming signals.
Programming the bots inside us.
Potentially, yeah. Turning every one of these nanobots into like a walking receiver node for whatever commands the system wants to send out.
Wow. Okay, this is where it starts to sound like science fiction or maybe horror. The source directly references the Matrix, right? Saying, we're being prepped to become nodes, walking batteries.
That's the analogy used, yes.
Mm.
A walking battery that generates energy, feeding into their grid to sustain the grid. Now, whether that energy is literal electricity, maybe, or it could be psychological, energy, data, attention.
Turning individuals into components of some vast network.
Exactly. Part of the system, sustaining the system. And the source argues the sales pitch is already here. Look at technologies like Neuralink.
Promising amazing things restoring sight, movement.
Promising to do what Jesus did, is how the source puts it. Giving sight, making the lame walk, eventually offering a form of immortality.
It's positioned as progress, but the source sees it as this convergence of biological, technological, and ultimately spiritual deception.
That's the claim.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. From the general population to the military side. Super soldier programs. The source insists these aren't just sci-fi concepts, but real programs in the US, China, Russia now.
Yeah, that's a major claim. And the link back to the hybridization agenda is presented as a kind of dark bargain.
A bargain between who?
Between governments or factions within them and these aliens or fallen angels. The deal, allegedly, is that the aliens are allowed to abduct people, experiment.
In exchange for what?
For help in creating the perfect genetic super soldier. The military gets enhanced warriors, stronger, more resilient, maybe even psychically controlled, and the aliens get more test subjects, more data for their bigger genetic project.
And where does all this supposed hybridization happen? Not exactly out in the open.
No, the sources point to deep underground military bases, DMBS. These are described as vast secret complexes run by governments, especially the U.S., totally off the book.
So the hybridization work goes black down there.
That's the idea, using this forbidden alien or fallen angel technology, hidden from any public scrutiny. And the source claims this tech isn't shared widely, even within governments.
Who gets access then?
It's supposedly restricted to inner circles, Luciferian secret societies they're called, and certain blood families.
That term again, blood families. We hear that a lot in these kinds of narratives. What does the source mean by it?
It usually refers to, well, ancient dynasties, families with supposed lineage tracing back, sometimes even to the figures in Genesis 6, the original hybrids. They're presented as the human controllers, the gatekeepers of this forbidden knowledge and power through generations. Royalty, banking, politics.
Keeping it all locked down. It's interesting how the sources connect these modern claims directly back to biblical figures, too. They mention Nimrod.
Right. Described as the, quote, first Mason. And the claim is he actually used this ancient knowledge to manipulate his own genome.
To become what? A Gibborim? What is that exactly in this context?
Huh?
More than just a giant.
In this narrative, the Gibborim were the original products of that fallen angel-human mixing, the mighty men of old. Nimrod is framed as the first powerful figure after the flood who actively tried to reclaim or replicate that forbidden power. So not just physically imposing, but possessing knowledge, power, maybe a connection that allowed him to build empires.
So the super soldier program is just the modern version of Nimrod's ambition.
That's how it's presented. An ancient quest for enhanced but ultimately corrupted power just using new technology now. And they even mentioned Samson.
As another example, like a divinely powered super soldier.
Yeah, demonstrating that kind of extreme strength and resilience. It's all used to argue that this concept isn't new, it's ancient, just operating deeper in the shadows today.
Okay, so if these programs are so secret, how does the public get conditioned to accept any of this? Genetic tinkering, tech implants. That brings us to predictive programming.
Right. The idea is gradual desensitization. The sources argue that movies, media, they're constantly seeding these ideas, preparing us, reflecting, maybe even creating that desire to be more than mere human.
Like wanting superpower.
Exactly. The sight of a hawk, strength of a mule. Every superhero movie, every sci-fi story about enhancement is seen as part of this long-term conditioning process.
And this is where that really specific kind of startling connection comes in between the Captain America movie from 2011 and the COVID outbreak.
Yes, that's a key piece of evidence cited. The source points out that in the final scene, when Captain America wakes up in modern Times Square, you can see coronavirus advertisements in the background, clear as day.
Which is odd for 2011, but they add another layer, don't they? Something numerical.
They do. They note Captain America supposedly went into hibernation, or was frozen, in 1949. Then they add 70 years, a significant number in biblical terms, which brings you to 2019.
The year COVID emerged.
The year the source claims the COVID bioweapon was deliberately released in China in the fall of 2019. So that 70-year calculation, plus the visual cue, is presented as proof of planning, predictive programming.
Wow, okay. So COVID itself, then, is viewed not as a natural event, but as
As a pandemic, that's the term used, designed, allegedly, for specific purposes. Contaminating the population, culling reducing numbers, and controlling the survivors. The cattle, as the source rather chillingly puts it.
and the economic damage, the deaths, just collateral.
Acceptable losses, according to this view, in service of the larger agenda, setting the stage for what comes next.
And the sources warn that next is another pandemic. They specifically mention the Johns Hopkins SPARS pandemic simulation for 2025-2028.
Yes, much like Event 201 preceded COVID, the SPARS scenario is seen as a blueprint for the next phase, whether it's called SPARS or maybe mutated avian flu or something else.
The predicted outcome is the same.
More lockdowns, stricter mask mandates, and crucially, more injections. The source projects this will lead to massive population reduction, quote, culling millions and preparing the remaining population.
For the mark of the beast technology, weakened, scared, and ready to accept whatever promises survival.
That's the alleged strategy. Fear and compliance paving the way for the final technological integration.
It's a vast, dark narrative, and it all seems to be building towards some kind of climax, an arrival.
Yes. The culmination, according to the source, is the public arrival of the ancient aliens. They might be called the Anunnaki or described as shining serpent beings.
And when they arrive, what happens? Do they take over?
They don't immediately take over everything. Instead, they make a specific demand. They insist on dealing with only one man.
Antichrist.
The figure identified in the source material as the biblical Antichrist, yes. And the prediction is that the world, tired of chaos, pandemics, fear, will actually agree to this. For peace and safety. That's the promise. Let this one leader interface with the powerful newcomers, bring order back.
And that acceptance triggers the final consolidation.
Instantly. It accelerates the push for a one-world government, concentrating all power, all wealth, into the hands of this leader and the entities behind him. The source even points to old movies, like the 1950s version of The Day the Earth Stood Still.
As predictive programming for this exact scenario, an alien arrival demanding submission to one authority figure for planetary survival?
Precisely, laying the groundwork in our collective imagination for decades.
We have certainly covered a lot of ground. I mean, from a supposed Luciferian Directive starting in Genesis, through genetic modification, fallen angel DNA, Nimrod, Samson, all the way to blockchain mRNA, super soldiers and DMBS, and predicted future pandemics like SPARS 2025-2028. It's an incredibly detailed and sprawling claim.
It really is. And I think the key takeaway for you listening, according to these sources, is the assertion that every crisis, every false flag, every pandemic, real or perceived, has an underlying goal: to erode individual rights and prepare humanity for total control.
Control facilitated by technology.
Yes, and maybe consider this final detail the source emphasizes, connecting that tech infrastructure to the arrival scenario, the smartphone. Almost everyone has one, right?
Ubiquitous.
The claim is, when these aliens arrive, that existing network may be interacting with those nanobots via frequencies we've talked about, could be used. weaponized, essentially,
Hmm.
to channel mass psychosis, mass delusion, pushing humanity to accept this arriving savior, the Antichrist. That idea, using the tech already in our pockets for global scale psychological manipulation, that's a genuinely chilling thought to end on.